TV, folks.
We are live TV right now, so wow, we are really live. Okay, welcome everybody. You got to jump in mid conversation, some things that we're happy that it went live just after it. So we've got some cool guests, and we normally don't like to tell anybody who the guests are until right up at the last minute. And I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. This is a cool panel because we have operations, marketing. Eric, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I'm Eric Wiley with Pac Res Mortgage. I've been in the business 29 years. Ken and I have known each other for about 20 of those years. And Ken has served our company from just startup all the way. We were the first customer of the Coop, I believe. Actually, the first.
You were the first
company
launched in the Coop.
Yeah, and since that time, we've obviously partnered for a long time and through a lot of things. And I've been in the business as an originator, working my way into operations, working my way a little bit into compliance and technology, and that kind of led me to, partner up with Ken quite a bit early on. And, we've obviously seen some things over the last 30 years, so I think we're going to, all of us, be able to talk about that.
Yeah, and you did some coaching internally, which was super cool.
I did, yeah. So I personally, I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife. I enjoy the sales side, I enjoy the training side, I enjoy helping people get from point A to point B. Personally, I like watching them get rewarded for that. It's kind of like watching a first-time home buyer achieve home ownership for the first time. It's fun to do that with people inside the company that are going from here and leveling up and learning new things, maybe refining things, and just becoming better at what they do.
So fun fact about Wiley, we get sushi once every month or once every other month, but one of my core memories of you is when the market starts crashing in 07, it starts crashing. At some point, because we would always connect over all these companies, and it was the smaller one, it was, smaller subprime companies that went first. And my core memory, I was teaching at Mortgage Trust, and I was out on a break, like a lunch break, and I'm standing out there, and I pull up my phone, and I saw that IndyMac, I think it was IndyMac that went down that day. And you and I talked on that lunch, and we went, oh, this is bigger than subprime. Like, I still remember that moment where what was cool is I had you to talk to because we had gone through so much together that I was like, Wiley, what does this mean? And we got to, go back and forth on this means it's coming for everybody, at this point. So that was one of my core memories.
Well, that was a big moment for us because about 4 or 5 months prior to that, we had a little canary in the coal mine where IndyMac was the underwriter of a jumbo loan, the investor on the jumbo loan, and the warehouse line on the jumbo loan. So that was our only warehouse facility at that time. We were 3 years in business and had been ramping up and didn't see the need yet to go to the expense of doubling down on warehouse facilities and take out investors and all that relates to that. But we had that canary in the coal mine where I was going on camping trip. I got called back by my underwriting manager, and she said, hey, we got a problem. And so back then, that's a big problem for a company that's earlier in its years. And it was a jumbo loan that today would be probably twice as big. And so ultimately, we got them to buy it. Again, they were all in on this thing. But we said, okay, what's going on here? So we started doing more research. We got out of IndyMac, had 2 warehouse facilities at least from that point on, and then had 2 takeout investors for every product because if you get stuck with these things, and if it's a sign of an industry trend, there's no out. Like, you're stuck with this stuff, and pretty soon people got stuck with things.
Yeah. All right, James. Little introduction for you. Yep.
All right. James Duncan, SVP of Marketing and Engagement for Lower, and that's a relatively new title change and position change. For previously was with Thrive Mortgage for the last 8 or 9 years and led the marketing division there. Then transitioned over to Lower. Now I have the privilege of leading a fantastic marketing and brand division over at Lower.
And James flew in this morning. So last night, you flew in from Austin. So you're here for a few days shooting content with us.
Absolutely.
Also for Coop subscribers, Knowledge Coop Plus subscribers, James is in a lot of that training. We flew James up and did a ton of content with you.
Yeah.
Both of you are on the podcast. Nicole's going to be on the podcast. Nicole, introduce yourself for everybody.
I'm Nicole Abraham. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Synergy One Lending. Been with Synergy 5 years. Can't believe this is the first time I've been here. I'm literally 20 minutes down the road.
It's crazy.
And you say 07, 08, I remember, I don't even know. I was probably wholesale going to an office went to go do a training presentation, and all of a sudden there are chains on the door and sorry, funding no loans.
No.
I can't remember the name of the company, but I'm like, well, apparently this isn't a good sales call today.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I remember those times well.
Wow. It was a crazy time. I mean, I told people yesterday, I was speaking to a group and I said, you know, if you're in this business right now, it means you've made it through the last few very rough years, and that's pretty commendable, or insane. So either you don't know better or you're doing it pretty well. And usually when we go through times like this, the people left over that are still in the business are usually the more professional. They've built the right business. They've done the right things. They've budgeted their own personal finance as well, because that's so much of it, of just making through. But I want to start just by getting kind of an overall view. It feels like things are getting better. I mean, just from our angle as a company, we're signing contracts again. You know, there was a time we'd call a company like, did you know we have AI? And they'd be like, does it cost any money? No, we have no budget for anything. But now it feels like that's loosening. Are you guys, is this true of your companies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I mean, we're seeing, you know, there are production increases, which is strange. I mean, we were talking about it yesterday when housing starts are still down and purchases are still down. But refis, I mean, we were doing loans, you know, 7.5, depending on.
Right.
And so we're starting to see some of that in that activity again. And I think those companies that if they, you know, I'm sure we weren't the only ones, but in 2023, especially in Q3, Q4, we went through our contracts and what do we really need to have? Oh, we have this contract. We haven't even used this piece of tech. Like, we don't need it. And so.
And we made it through.
You made it through.
Launchku survived.
We still have you. Yes, of course.
So
just looking at all of that.
That's really the catch. Is it's got to be purposeful. Anything that's just kind of ancillary, bell and whistle type of thing. No, it's still on the chopping block. But if it's something that's very strategic, very intentional, it's going to increase the efficiency either for operations or for sales in doing what they do every day. Then it's a viable candidate for adoption. Especially if it's something that's replacing either an outdated or an unadopted piece of tech, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
That where there can be an offset of the cost and preferably cost going down, obviously.
How, I mean, it is pretty amazing to me that the amount of money we waste as an industry when things are good. And that it takes something like this for us to go, you know, we've never used this software and still we keep paying for it. And I know with us, we look through all of our subscriptions and we were subscribed to all these software that like nobody even knew who originally wanted the software. We're paying the monthly fee because it's coming out every single month. And it took Allison, I mean, days to go through all of these and like meet with people in the company. Like, does anybody know what this thing is? And we were paying our electricity on our old building we weren't even in anymore. And that's our fault. I mean, we fixed that, but like nobody's paying attention when the money's there.
Right.
We had a piece of technology, and you'll find this funny. It was actually budgeting software.
Oh my god!
We were paying for. I'm like, is anybody using the budgeting software? No. Great. I'll build you an Excel spreadsheet. Like, if you
oh
want to
my
budget.
gosh, that's so ironic.
Yes.
It's a budgeting software that. Wow. What about you guys?
Well, I think our industry got so heavy into trying to react to the big pickup in business that we got a little sloppy, right? So we had to do things. We had to be quick.
Yeah.
We had to hire folks. We had to go remote. We had to sign on to subscriptions of things that people that were coming to us needed or wanted or whatever. Have to have it or can't live without it. And so we've gone for 2 years now going through leases, going through software, going through all kinds of expenses that I think if we were just to have today's volume as we are, then I think a lot of us have kind of gotten down to right sizing to that environment. But you can't go up easy and you can't go down easy in this business, and it's scalability. And I think that's partly what you guys are talking about with AI here within the coop, but AI within the industry, is that we don't want that to happen again, because scalability is big from a human standpoint, a training standpoint, a technology, a seat count type technology standpoint. And I think the industry saw what happened so quick. We had such dramatic, ups and downs in this time frame that I don't think we want to repeat that.
Yeah.
No.
How do you say no? I mean, all three of you are executives, so obviously people are bringing things to you like this is really going to help. Almost like somebody saying, I really want to license in Louisiana
yeah.
because I've got this cousin that just moved to Louisiana. How do you weigh all of that, and how much of it is making somebody happy at your company versus, no, this is a really good, make sense decision?
Yeah. We've got a very simple test that will at least initiate the conversation. And Randall, if you're watching, you're going to smile when I say this. But we ask 3 questions: is it legal? Is it profitable? Is it good for our people? And if it passes that smell test, then we say, okay, it passed that first barrier. Now, where does it fit in with our overall growth strategy, our initiatives, our top priorities? Where does it fit in? And second of all, who's going to pay for it, or how are we going to pay for it? And is it something where we're just taking on another liability, or do we have an offset of an asset to counter it? And so just going through that process, having a really dialed in vendor management process is great. Hey, Liz. And and so just if you've got the systems in place to handle it and to take you through that decisioning process, then it works out a whole lot better for you than just spitballing and saying, hey, shiny bell and whistle. Let's get it.
Is it legal? Is it
Profitable.
And
is it good for our people?
Okay, cool. I love that legal was the beginning. My compliance.
Oh, yeah.
Like, love you, James. Awesome. So in general, things. Oh, did you guys have anything to add to that?
No,
Pretty
I like
good.
this answer.
Yeah.
In general, the market, as far as houses being sold, as far as you mentioned, refis are back for those who got in
Not
at the
back,
worst time.
but
but
we're
they're
starting
happening.
to see.
Approaching.
Yeah,
You don't have to have a
increase.
divorce to get a refinance right
No.
now.
Correct.
Okay,
No.
cool. So that's starting to come back a little bit. How about loan officer mentality? Are they? It's probably there's a range,
Sure.
Yeah.
but do you see any positivity coming from loan officers? And
I would say if you look at year to year, so if we look at the start of, where we were 2 years ago, we were into rate hikes, right? You were having a lot of things that were going off the rails at that point.
Yeah.
You had last year that everyone thought it would get better, and then it wasn't. It was missing milestones that were forecasted to get better. And
May
I
10th
think
never
at this
came.
time, I think most of us would look, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So I think at this point you have an industry that's looking at it going, yeah, the Fed might not be really, committing to a September rate reduction or something, but I think all indications, and this is a very interesting economy and good news, bad news all at once
Yeah.
in ways that we haven't really seen before. So I think that you have people going, okay, this is kind of the bottom. I think you have a home ownership issue of the locked in the interest rates thing, where that's going to take a little time to settle out. They're going to really want to see that the market looks a little bit more vibrant, I think, before they start doing the listings. And so there's still in the Northwest here, I think, or some markets around where I live, for instance, are pretty tight still with real
Sure.
estate. So I think that side, maybe the refinances are opening up a little bit, but I think it may take a little bit into next year to really have people go, okay, this is the time I'm going to make that move. I'm going to leave that great rate because I have something else I need to do.
it's funny, I'm really good friends with Matt Graham from MBS Live, and so we're texting all the time about what's going on in the market. And yeah, he's an hour of our CE this year is Matt Graham talking about how the markets work, and we filmed it October 30th of 2023. And so you're watching it all year long with what you learned from October 30th. So we try to keep it pretty general. But he says in that video, it's likely we don't get any sort of rate reduction until September 24. And when he said it on the video, the whole room was like, did he just do that? Like, it literally looks like September 24 is the first rate reduction. Don't know how he did it, but it was pretty brilliant. But I do know that a lot of people coming up on that date that they expected things to get better. When it didn't, it was just like a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
And people were like, maybe it never gets better.
Yeah.
I still think there's a little bit of optimism out there. I think we're starting to see that with our loan officers and even equity loans and Barry
Renovation.
does a great job of just like drilling it down and pay off the debt and financial wealth, because home ownership is one component of it, but it's really financial wealth.
Right.
Yes.
So I think they're starting to see optimism.
I gotta mention that home equity thing. Chase doesn't do home equity anymore.
Oh,
Really?
I called them about a HELOC because we have
got
another
you.
remodel thing. I would love that.
okay.
And I filled out the form online. So I go online to my bank because people always say go to a
Yeah.
bank or credit union for a HELOC. That's always kind of been the model. So I jump online, I fill out the whole thing, and then it says, great, thank you for applying. We'll have a loan officer call you. Loan officer calls me and goes, hey, we don't do HELOCs. I'm like, thank you for that. Good talk. And then I got my letter
the
in the
only
mail
alternative.
saying
Click,
that I was
no.
withdrawing or that they didn't have a loan for me, whatever. non-depositories are leading the way in every way, and banks seem to be backing away from mortgage even more than they already were.
Well, I would
Yeah.
guess some of that's liquidity.
Yeah.
Those things aren't so
Yep.
liquid in the secondary market, so therefore they have to sit on the books, and they've got to have capital reserves a little bit more associated with that these days.
Do you actually bank with Chase?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then that's even more strange.
That's
I mean,
why
if
I
you
thought
were like
it
a
would be,
rando,
I have a private
just-
banking thing, and I have a private banker and all that, and they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, no. And I thought
We don't wanna
that's
make
kind of
money
their
off
thing.
you.
Like I thought
Yeah.
that's the mortgage they were still doing was that HELOC, but not a thing. By the way, anybody with questions out there in Facebook land, we've got our best, Kirk Faulkner, monitoring all of the questions coming in. Kirk, we good?
We are good so far. Keep rolling.
All right, definitely ask your questions in there. I interrupted somebody just a second ago.
I don't think
No, I was
Wow.
just going to say that I think the media has been so big on, we had housing values go up a lot during COVID. And the thought was, or the projected, media content was all about a housing correction that honestly they were looking for the last decade.
Sure.
And we look at it today and go, okay, I think finally everyone, including the consumer public, is going, I don't think homes are going down in value. So I think, real estate's starting to look a little bit safer in that respect too. So as rates get better and you have real estate not doing what was projected by the media as far as crashing, I think that's a big positive.
I think back to your initial question that started this around loan officer sentiment. It really depends on the loan officer. It depends on kind of their mindset, the kind of professional that they are. If they got into the business in 2020 and 2021, this was a gut punch to
Yeah.
them, and they were like, "This isn't what I was promised."
Right.
My
My friends were making so much money. That's why I did this.
Exactly. And but the ones who have been through this cycle, it seems to me the ones who've been through this cycle before and have weathered those past storms, whether it was '08 or even before then, they're the ones who they've got their message down. They know their brand. They know what it is that they are selling, what they're providing to their consumers, and they're not allowing market forces to dictate what their emotion is from day to day. Those are the folks that are going to be fine, and those are the folks that have found opportunities, and despite what the market conditions have been, and they're the ones who are going to thrive and be successful when as things begin to, because there's a lot of markets that we serve where the tide has already turned,
Yeah.
and especially in the southern states, and there's been talks about a lot of inventory coming available now. Some of it is a result of days on market, yes, but there is an increase in inventory, and so there are enough positive signs to look towards and point towards to know that I don't want to say the worst is necessarily behind us because we got an election coming up,
Yeah.
Right.
but I think it's fair to say that to your point earlier, the people who are still here, I think are the ones who have been born out of adversity and been bred for success.
I think we could use, and this is going to be a crazy statement, we could really use a 20% decrease in values across the board in the United States of America right now. Like, if we got it, first of all, nobody hurts because you only hurt when you sell and didn't sell for as much as you thought you could sell for, right? So it wouldn't hurt any existing homeowners. Everybody has more than 50% equity. Most of America is sitting on over 40 or 50% of their house's equity. Like they've just got so much. And my kids can't buy a house. I care about that the most. Most kids can't afford anything that's out there right now. And so if we had a 20% drop in, not that I'm predicting a 20% drop in values, but if we had it, I don't think it would hurt at all. And I think it would only benefit young people. So when people talk about, will the market go down? Man, I hope so. That's sacrilegious to say, but I kind of hope it does because I think it's still a little bit inflated when you look at affordability. And let me just stand on my soapbox for another minute. I now pay $1,000 a month for car insurance.
Yeah.
I made that comment on Facebook, and people are like, wow, what kind of cars? They're not crazy cars. I had a broker call and say, let me get you better than that. That sounds insane, right? She starts looking at it. She's like, oh my gosh, it is that expensive. So I got to think that affordability of homes, when you factor in, when my youngest leaves the house in the next couple months and she goes and rents an apartment, she has to be on her own insurance. That's going to affect her ability to afford even rent. And I just don't know where that goes and how affordability gets any easier when all the other stuff's still going.
Well, even in the Western states, just because I know those the best, is even homeowners insurance. I get loans coming in for docs like, sorry, it's a rush. I've been trying to get insurance for a month.
Oh my
I
gosh.
went and price shopped all my insurance, my car insurance,
Yeah.
my home insurance, and we have this small little built an old cabin, and I cannot switch. They're like, yeah, we're not insuring any new policies and it was in Oregon. It's 2.5
What?
hours away. I cannot get different insurance, which wasn't high, so I'm okay.
Wow.
But California specifically,
Oh, yeah.
really hard time fight because of the wildfires. But we've had them here in Oregon too. Just homeowners insurance and seeing some of the prices
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one facing
Nope.
high homeowners insurance or high car insurance, but Kirk's got a question.
In the context of affordability, and this is from one of our favorite viewers, Anonymous, would you all be willing to chat a little bit about, there's great anticipation about the pending or probable pending quarter point rate adjustment downward by the Fed. Do you see that having the impact that the market seems to be hoping it's going to have, or what do you see as the overall effect of that quarter point drop that we're assuming is coming soon?
What- yeah.
I was told there would be no math and no.
Oh, she did it first.
Work it in. Dang it.
There was a challenge to see who
I'm
could
sorry,
say that
points,
first.
Matt.
That was
That
pretty
seems
good.
math-like. It might be all we get.
You get a sticker.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that I think it's going to be a little bit of business as usual. I think it's going to take a couple of those cycles before the market really reacts and we see any significant swing the other way. Just because recency bias is going to kick in, and I think that the investors are going to say, "Yeah, we've heard this song before," and it's just going to be
Well,
on a
let's stick, yeah.
repeat. I think until they see definitive proof, potentially 3 months or a couple of quarters in a row of the Fed actually stepping up and doing what the industry has been begging them to do for the last year and a half, I think it's going to be an attitude of show me, don't tell me.
I would agree.
Yeah, the other thing about it is that the common thought out there is that if a quarter point falls in the Fed rate, then all of a sudden mortgages and all long-term
Yeah.
debts go down by a quarter. But leading into it, if that's the anticipation, it's already being priced in, so
Yeah.
it's all smooth. There is not now. If a half point happened and a quarter was projected,
Right.
then you have
Major
a
Then you got
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
some serious
and price
knee-jerking.
indication that that's going to happen going forward. So, so it's that if it's expected, everyone kind of like if you expect good weather on vacation, you pack for that. Like you're doing that week before you go. You're not just showing up and figuring out what to wear. And I think that's what the markets do is they're so sophisticated these days that is already mostly priced in. You know, leading the month, 2 month ahead of time before that date.
Can I make a plea on behalf of all marketing directors across the industry?
Absolutely.
When that happens, kids, do not send a request to your marketing department saying, "Hey, can you put out a graphic or a flyer that rates have dropped?" Please,
Does
I'm
that
begging
happen?
you.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm over compliance. I see the marketing compliance. So, yes.
Oh, my
Yeah, if we
gosh.
get those
Yeah.
requests, I'm like,
Yeah, if that's your problem. I mean, you and I were having that conversation
Yeah.
earlier today. If that's your approach, you're approaching it incorrectly, and you're selling on the wrong thing.
even my dad will call. So, should I refi? The rates just dropped to half.
Oh
I'm
my
like, no,
gosh.
Dad, this isn't how this works.
Right.
It's a little different.
Hopefully, Dad's not watching.
Yeah, I'm glad
yeah.
you said about it already being baked in.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So
I have enjoyed getting money from savings.
Yeah.
Like for a while, remember when you put your savings account money, you move money over to savings and they gave you like 0.001%. It is nice. We've got money now in some money markets again and some cool little.
Even
you
our
know.
checking is paying interest. I'm like, it may. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. Not our. Well, I
Oh,
don't have
yeah.
a bank account, but the bank I bank at
Yeah.
does have.
I thought you just said you don't have a bank account, like you don't
No,
trust
no,
the
no,
banks.
no, no. Sorry. The
Mattress
company-
money over here.
It's all fine, just as long as it's common and
And seasoning under the
yeah,
mattress.
seasoning.
Yeah.
I see pictures of it all the time in my loan files. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. Have people put pictures of money in?
Oh yes,
Really?
yes.
we were faxed a check to show can
Faxed?
we just cash this. I mean, it's 20 years ago, but yeah, you know, people do
Wow.
these things. I was like, no, I can't do that.
Yes.
I went into the bank today to deposit cash, and I put cash in the bank, and the lady goes, "Anything more I can do for you?" And I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Do you want a receipt?" And I go, "No, I use the app for everything." But when I took a picture of the cash and tried to deposit it into the app, it wasn't allowing it. But that would have been super cool if it did.
Yeah.
Kirk's got a question for us.
I think this question pertains to homeownership equity that we perceive to be greater than it was in the past downturn. But this is from Alexander Ehrlich, who says, what about the millennials and Gen Xers that keep tapping their equity or bought in the past 5 years with minimal down?
Was there minimal down? I guess FHA would have given you that
FHA.
option.
Well, even
Three-
Fannie
three-
Fannie Freddie is
yeah,
97.
30%.
So
I mean, if you bought more than a year ago, you have equity. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one because, the St. Louis Fred website that probably a lot of people are familiar with that are behind the scenes anyway in the business shows, rates of appreciation of housing and shows it over time. And we have been in a very accelerated amount of housing appreciation since 2020. But even before that, we were at a more elevated rate of appreciation because of supply being down. And so as we're coming back off of that, back when I got in the business, rates of appreciation were maybe 2 to 4% for a state. And so for a community, you'd kind of have that going on. Today, you've had a lot more than that. It does cost something to get out of your house if you're going to go and do it, a year or two after buying. But I think we're in an actual, a pretty positive place right now for home appreciation if you're a homeowner.
By the way, Alex, I know Alex, she's a friend of mine. She's in the Denver area. And from what I was just told about Denver, they have a lot of houses on the market right now. Like that whole area is starting to spike. I know Boise's got more houses on the market than they had. I do feel like there's certain markets.
The flight with work from home that, communities were built up. Some communities were departed from and some were built up. So I think that's starting to reverse a little bit.
I do want to know on remote, do you guys have more people in office now? Because I know you guys I remember having sushi with you in your conference room and not one person was in the office. Maybe there was one.
I think that's right.
That was like the deepest part of that time. But like now, are you seeing people go back? Some people yesterday told me that they've got 6 people in their office 2 blocks down and they just love hanging out together. Like being back is just feeding their souls. So are you guys seeing that? Or are you guys still a lot of people not there?
Some. It's for us, we're still predominantly work from home workforce, and which just allows for a little bit more diversity of the type of employee you're able to get. If somebody doesn't want to move to where the corporate office is, great. We can set you up work from home. Prior to the merger with Lower, I don't know what the exact stats are now post merger with Lower, but with Thrive previously, we were, I think I saw stats upwards around 74% work from home. So we were before COVID hit, Thrive was already a predominantly work from home workforce, with the exception of like branch employees going into the physical branch location. But as far as like operations, corporate support, most everybody was working from home.
So that surprises me about you guys, because the first time I ever walked into your office was like I had walked into a family room full of people who love each other.
Yeah.
Like I've never felt that vibe from a company before, and I'll never forget. Somebody brought me a mug, and it was like World's Best Grandma. Was it you?
Yeah, I picked the mug.
Oh my gosh! I drank out of that mug, and I laughed, and I called my wife after. I'm like, this company knows how to treat each other, and it was super cool. So it's strange to me that you guys haven't brought that culture back together.
Well, I think that we found ways to do it,
Okay.
whether through just having, hey, let's go to happy hour.
Happy hour.
I mean,
You got to be
having social
intentional.
events.
You meet up still, so you're still
Yeah.
getting some FaceTime.
Yeah,
Nice.
but you can only get away with doing that if you have the culture that is suited for that. And what's cool about not to do a commercial for Lower, but what was cool about the transition from Thrive into Thrive assimilating into Lower is that Lower has a very similar culture where
nice.
you can tell they genuinely care about each other, and that makes all the difference in the world. So it makes it easier for us to have events like that. And when you send out a message, hey, Kim Perry's coming to town, people are going to flock to it, and we're going to have a good time because whether you were there or not, we would have had a good time. Just
What?
Because
That's
You made it
completely
more
upsetting.
fun. I'm not-
I brought
Good, not a
lot
great
of that
time.
fun.
Good time.
Oh, that's right. Great time, 'cause I was
You brought
there.
it next level.
You took it to the great
We
time.
still would have had fun. We
Yeah.
still would
Yeah.
have learned
Okay.
and gotten our seed
Right.
done.
It
but
wouldn't have been that level.
It wouldn't have been
Yeah.
exceptional.
Now, I should mention, you just completed your transition into Lower from Thrive.
Yeah.
Eric, you're in process on a transition into
Pack Res and Go.
Pack
Yes.
Res and Go. Nicole, you're not in
No,
any
I'm in. Anybody? I need somebody who wants to come. Like, let me know. Call me.
So it is interesting to have all of you guys. Can we talk just for a little bit about acquisitions, because M&A was everywhere, and you experienced it. I've seen it go one of two ways, right? In some cases, you see a merger, and I think the whole industry looks at it and go, "How's that going to work? Like that marriage is not going to work at all." And it doesn't. And then in some cases you see it and you go, actually, that makes sense. Like you're talking about, we already have a good culture. They have a good culture. It's a fit. Is culture fit the most important thing in that point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Otherwise, it's just a money transaction
Correct.
or an asset purchase.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I'd say culture and style. So type of, we're an IMB. So the type of IMB, the type of self-gen, and then also culture. Those have to match.
Yeah.
When reputation's got to match, right? Like
course.
if you have a reputation and somebody buys you who has, I always go into the CFPB or the NMLS consumer access site and you can see all the enforcement orders. So when I have a friend who says, I just started working for a new company, I always pop in to see if they have any enforcement orders and I go, oh dang, that's not a great idea. Like when you see what's been done, of course you read them and make sure that those are real enforcement orders against like somebody
But that was from 2019. I'm like, that's not that far long ago, guys.
Especially when it's one where it's like clear culture problems.
Yeah.
You see those. But so reputation's big because if you go to work for a company that's just clear on, we don't believe in loan officers aren't our thing. We believe that bots should be able to handle everything. That's going to be a different model than you're looking for. What about you? You've made
The next thing is systems right behind it. Because if I've got to go learn an entire new system, I just want to do a loan at the end of the day. And so there is this model match of things, culture and feelings and systems becomes a large chunk of it. And there have been some of recent where the systems aren't model match and everybody's having to learn something new. Well, if I'm going to have to learn something new anyway, I might as well go and start looking and popping my head out.
Right.
Like my team's already going to have to transition somewhere.
Right.
Because that's normally the biggest fear. When somebody leaves, it's how do I move my book of business? What do I have to learn? What does the onboarding look like? What does the transition look like? Whether it's M&A or I'm just picking up, Kirk Walkner to come originate for me.
Which you're not.
But benefits.
You can't have them. Benefits. What, are you going to pay them a salary? That's,
I know.
Oh, man.
But that is, that's when they start looking and what does somebody else have? And there's a lot of that going on right now. So.
Eric Levin is so happy you just said Model Match. I don't know if you guys know Eric, but he's
We're on Model Match.
Are you really?
That was not intentional by any means.
It's like the right words.
But it is the right word, yes.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, wow, they must be big on Model Match.
No.
He did a lot of recruiting videos inside the coop for us.
Oh, yeah?
And his whole thing is like, it has to match.
Yes.
And I was at a Masters Coach event one year, and it was an interesting thing because you had branch managers that weren't owners, and then in the other room you had more execs. And the branch managers, one of them said, if my branch has a different culture than my company's culture, what do I do? And everybody in the room said, you leave. And it was, that culture is not ever going to be, like, you're not going to shift your culture and have them, all of a sudden you're going to meet in the middle somewhere. If you don't believe in your company's culture and you're a branch, it's probably not a fit. Because you could try to run it all you want, but if the company's not running that same way that you would have run yours, it's just going to be bad overall. I thought that was interesting.
And it works both ways. If you're an executive or a divisional sales lead and you got a single branch that is toxic or that is commandeering operations support hours and blowing up the underwriters at all hours of the day and just causing nothing but stress and headache, sometimes addition by subtraction is the solution.
There's a guy named Cameron Harold who does the COO Alliance. He was the COO of Got Junk, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And so took that thing all the way up, exited, and I got to see him speak at Steve Sims Distillery, like they have a speakeasy. And I was there and he was talking and he wrote this chart on the board that I've never forgotten, and it's productivity, like how good are you at your job, and culture. And he said if you're high productivity, high culture, handcuff that person, keep them forever. If you're high productivity, low culture, you're fired. If you're low productivity, high culture, let's move that person into another spot that they might fit better. If you're low culture, low productivity, then that's an obvious
What are you doing?
let go. But he said if there's no culture, it's an obvious move, even if the productivity is super high, because you've seen people burn their processors out, and I'm not going to say any names, but we know of people that they keep moving from one place to another because they get there long enough to burn everybody out, and then they have to make a move, and then they have to make a move, and it's just not worth it to bring that kind of person into your organization.
And I think that's one thing, between 22, 23, at least one thing we've adopted is we're all in, let's grow. But you can't be fear-based anymore. Like you're going to have to we had to make really hard decisions in 23. I don't know of one single mortgage company that didn't have to make a reduction in force.
Right.
We didn't have, I didn't part with the knowledge coop, but we had to part with technology vendors or just vendors in general. But some of it is the people that don't fit? Are you adding value? Are you know, or are you a negative? I mean, we all have friends, like, they don't really bring anything to the party, but they're not a negative either, right?
Right.
You know, that type
Right.
of mentality. So I've seen that shift a lot in the past 12 months.
Have you guys all had to do reduction in force?
I think everyone in this business has.
I mean,
Yeah.
personally, I mean, you had to. That's the hardest thing, I think. In any, they don't tell you that becoming a leader in an organization that side exists. I can't think of anything I've ever done that's harder than that.
It's
I would
one of-
rather fire somebody because at least I have,
Totally.
I have a reason. They
Right.
did
Right.
something. But I probably cry more than, yeah. And then when they're nice and gracious, and this has been the best, that's even worse. Like,
It's
at least,
brutal.
at least get mad at me, like
Yeah.
something. I just,
Call me names.
please, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
My therapist, many of my hours in therapy last year were discussing that because it's just the worst. And
It
it's
is.
how do I look at myself at the end of the day?
I think it's one of the biggest things we face again is that scalability factor of we're here because there can be short-term little ripples in this business. A rate goes up, a rate goes down, you know, whatever disaster for a local market, things like that. But hiring and scaling people and then coming down off that is just so expensive, and it's expensive both ways, and it's taxing, and it's tough because people do start forming relationships, and then now things are intertwined. If you've done the right job in a department, you've delegated things out, and now you got to consolidate back to
Yep.
jacks of all trades, and it's a tough spot to be.
I don't
Yes.
like to hire to fire. That's
Right.
just
No.
and you try to be a strategic. You guys want the overtime? Like, because I'm not sure that this bubble's gonna, I don't know. And then but you don't want to kill your people. Like,
Right.
tax them out at the same time. It's a very delicate balance, and it's hard sometimes.
Yep.
It's a swingy industry.
Yeah.
Like it swings up, swings down. And I told a group yesterday, I said, if you want something super stable, the mortgage industry is not what you want to get into. Like you got to write it up and you got to write it down and you got to still, somehow keep your sanity about you. Now let's make a transition into the way people are saving time, saving money, and not needing to hire as many people. We're seeing is AI. AI is I'll kind of position this for you and then I want your comments. AI, when it first became a big deal and people were talking about it, it was all the rage. I was getting booked to speak on AI everywhere, talking about what's happening, where it's going. And then it really feels like, a lot of people have engaged with it. They've addressed it. There's a lot of AI that I wouldn't invest in or that I wouldn't use. There's a lot of AI that I would. But it feels like there's still, in a mortgage industry that's so tech behind all the time, we at first were like, oh yeah, this might do something. And then I feel like it's kind of taken a step back a little bit where it could be amazing in a lot of different areas of the mortgage industry. I want to start with marketing. You and I just shot a 1-hour video about marketing compliance being friends.
Yep.
You'd love it. We'll send it to you.
Really good stuff.
And part of that, in that video, you said, don't you dare ask ChatGPT to write a social media post for you and then not review it and modify it and change it. Are you seeing people, tell me your experience with that on AI for marketing?
Just in my examination of social media and also my own digging into AI, whether it was cloud, ChatGPT, whatever the platform was, and just kind of gaining experience with that, and knowing how the prompts work, knowing how the generative part of it will have a certain tone, will have a certain voice, certain cadence when it spits out its results. And if you don't drill down further and refine those results to make it more truly authentic to your voice, and you just kind of copy and paste whatever the first response is, it is so easy to pick that up. And I saw for the last 18 months, I've been watching a lot of social media feeds because I do way more watching on social media than actual posting. And probably wrong for a marketing director to say that, but I like watching, learning, picking up little things here and there. And I can tell the sales professionals, both realtors and loan officers, but I can even executives who are doing this. I can tell the people whose post was written 80 to 90% AI, and it was just a ChatGPT response, and they just copied and pasted, maybe reformatted for paragraph breaks and stuff like that. But I know that person well enough to know that is not how they write. That is not how they speak. And it loses a lot of credibility with me.
Authenticity's gone at that point.
Authenticity is gone at that point. And so that's why I'm such a huge proponent of, yes, use AI to get the structure, get the bones of what it is you want to say, whether it's a
SME
blog
content,
post,
yeah.
exactly, and get some research, like in preparation for all this content that you and I are going to be recording today and tomorrow. I use ChatGPT a lot to get going with the structure of like, help me reformat this. This is what I want to say it different. Stuff like that. That's fine. But if I'm just going to say, give me a prompt, I'm a marketing director, I want to know how to talk about UDAP and strategies related to it. Go. And then I just copy and paste that into a Word document.
Right.
That's going to be sketchy at best.
Right.
UDAP, you're in for a fun couple of days.
Got an hour on it today. It was amazing.
Well, today was him asking me the questions. Tomorrow's me asking him the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good point, because you can kind of see, sometimes you look at a post and you're like, that's straight up AI.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And it just, and it can say things that you really don't want it to say. It can still make things up. I was actually looking at ChatGPT 2 days ago. Wells Fargo had a settlement, but they have a lot of settlements. And I was asking ChatGPT to find this specific settlement. It was an employment case that they settled. And I'm like, I need you to find this employment case with Wells Fargo. It's like, oh, is it this one? And I'm like, no, that's not it. It has more like this, more like that, and kind of feeding it details. And it's like, oh, is it this one? And I'm like, no. Oh, is it this one? It was like, it couldn't get me the exact right thing I was looking for. So you still have to do work.
Yeah.
It's not, I think people think AI is going to be something they could just like, do this, and it's just going to do it, and then you're going to be able to pick it up and like present it. But it really still takes the human, but it can be really cool for shortcuts.
Stop thinking of it like a cheat code.
Yeah.
It's a more efficient way to do traditionally manual stuff, and when it comes to research, and also that. But I mean, if the research you need is behind a paywall, it can't help you.
Right.
I was shocked. My son's for finals. He's was a sophomore in high school. And the email comes out from the teacher. It's like, finals, it's going to be this essay. P.S. If I find any GPT in your essays, you will automatically fail this class.
Oh, yeah, good.
I didn't even think about it. I don't even know if Connor would figure it out. Actually, he probably would. But I was just shocked because you can tell.
You can. And you can put it into there's like a few websites you can put it into. It'll tell you whether it's AI.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, even in marketing compliance, there's times I see this newsletter, and I'm like, this isn't how this person writes. And it's not that it's even ChatGPT, but it's something. And I'm like, I'll copy it. I'll just go to the Google. I'll paste
find
it
the
in.
exact thing.
And I'm like, no, this is so-and-so's plagiarism. We're out. Like, not doing it. Like,
We had a client pay for a BSA policy, Bank Secrecy Act policy. They paid for it.
yeah.
And they showed it to me, and I'm like, I've seen this before. And I copy pasted it. It's off the website for FinCEN. It was like their blanket policy.
Their literal template.
Yeah.
Change a word or two. Come
I
on.
know. Eric, you comment on it, and I'm going to run in here for a second.
Yes.
You're up.
I'm up. So my experience with AI from the standpoint of writing things is that if I want some ideas, I want some ideas on this.
Yeah.
Boom, it'll give me ideas, then I write it. Or I draft something entirely and then say, clean this up, and it'll, boom, clean it up. Still my tone, still the right message, still the right content. And I just did that for the OMBA, Oregon Mortgage Bankers Association, from a legislative update kind of topic. But, I recognize that if I don't spend a ton of time, I write in a way that is for me only and not necessary for the world. And so it cleans it up nicely. But if you just say, write this message for this audience and don't give it any
Correct.
content, it's like, wow, that's way off. And
Yeah,
people don't proof it.
You're not doing yourself any
No.
favors at all.
No.
So from the standpoint of it being a content creation tool, yes, it can be beneficial. But if you are using it as your sole content creation tool and just taking it verbatim, you're selling yourself short. You're basically insulting your audience, because they know the difference too, whether you believe it or not. And you are going to see you might have like 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers or whatever. You're not going to see those numbers grow at all,
No.
because even news followers, even the folks that don't know you, they can sniff that stuff out at this point. And you're gonna see some attrition in the engagement and the people that are following you and engaging with your content.
Well, that's one thing I like about the Knowledge Cubes. Their AI, just even from a guideline perspective, can we land in a Hawaiian Lava Zone 5?
He's back.
I know.
Are you talking about us?
It will give you the
Yes.
guideline.
Oh my
But I
gosh.
love the feature of, but put this basically into an email that I can actually sound intelligent to my underwriter on. And so there's, one thing of the information and this and that, but like, help me do something with, and of course you're not marketing with it. You want to sound smart to your underwriter,
Of course
your
you do.
closer,
Oh, man.
And you want
I
to
love
cite
you
the right
guys got into
guideline
this
before.
topic while I was gone.
I know.
It's
I was trying to just be done. No, before you got back.
I think the biggest thing is garbage in, garbage out.
Correct.
Bingo.
And if you don't yourself know what an expected answer should basically look like, then you're off in left field and you don't even know it. And so I think this industry is kind of plagued at times with, well, I just want to get that through to the next stage. I just want to
Yep.
push it forward. I want
Yep.
it in the assembly line. I want it somewhere. And then everyone takes way more time to get that thing through the, the pipeline if it's a loan, or the client experience, the realtor experience, the seller's experience. Everything goes off track if you don't do your work up front. So I think when you do, like your AI, if you do your work up front, if you ask good questions, it'll give you good answers. If you ask a bad question, it'll give you an incomplete answer, just like exists today.
Okay, I have mixed feelings about Coupe AI. This will shock you. Mixed feelings in that when I was a loan officer, 1998, so we're talking about a few years ago, 26 years ago, I made my living knowing more guidelines than anybody. Like, I could beat anybody. If you were going to another loan officer, that's fine. Let's talk for 2 seconds. You'll realize I'm way more knowledgeable than any other loan officer. And now, you could just ask Coupe AI. It will give you the answer, show you where the guideline is, and you could compete against people that actually know what they're talking about. Now, the beauty is I knew what to ask. So I love that you said that, because I know where I'm kind of going with things. But I woke up, this was a month ago. I'm on Zillow and Redfin every day. Like, every day I look to see what red dots, the red dots that turn like gray red when you've seen them already before. So I'm always looking at like what houses are on the market. There's a fourplex on the market. And Tate, my son, wants to buy a fourplex, live in one, and then rent out the other three, because then that could be helping him, qualify. And I know I had heard somebody say it. I woke up in the morning, I literally rolled over, grabbed my phone, and I saw this like update that this fourplex was there. Jumped on Coupe AI. I said, hey, my son wants to buy a fourplex. I'm good signing on with him as like a co-signer or whatever. But like, if he goes and does this, could he go get this house and then use the 3 other, rent things as rent? And it's like, absolutely, he can do that. Here's how he would do it. And it just like outlined everything. And I called my son. I'm like, you don't even need me, dude. Like, you could actually qualify for this thing on your own.
You would actually hurt him.
I would?
You would if you were a non-occupant. Well, you're a qualifying family member, but you can reduce you on an FHA down to 75% versus max financing.
There you go.
go.
Yeah.
So it tells
That's
me all
AI
this
right
stuff.
there.
And I'm like, but the funny thing is, as a consumer using it, because I'm not a mortgage guy, it was like, I immediately thought we could almost turn Coupe AI into a lead generation machine and give it to consumers to ask questions about guidelines and then pass it on to LOs, but I never want to be a lead generation company. But it's that good. Like, you really can dial it in and ask it all the right questions. And I think it does save time.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about what you guys have built into Cooper is that you've made it a closed loop system. Is that it's something where you are in control of the inputs and what's fed in, and also with the mortgage background that you all possess, you're able to control those inputs so that in such a way so that there's not some of the inherent bias that sneaks in, because that's something that very few people actually take into consider, is the debiasing of a database that's an AI generative tool. And it's only, you said it best, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So based on the inputs of the programmers, the developers who built the thing, what biases are they bringing? So it means that AI is not insusceptible to logical fallacies.
Absolutely, right. The funny thing is, as we were building it, we realized just how much information is in so many stinking places, and they don't remove the non-updated stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just all still there. So we had to train it and then be like, by the way, the government sucks at guidelines, so you're going to run into this and this and this. And so we had to train it to take out all the stuff that isn't real, but is still on the internet.
Well, VA doesn't even update their handbook anymore. They just have gone to bulletins.
We
So
just
I'm
put
like-
all the bulletins
I'm like,
in.
I don't know this. This
So how
isn't
do you
in the
know to
this
reference
isn't in the
this?
handbook.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
you
a
gotta go.
super
I'm
shit,
like, okay, well now we all know. Just go to the bulletins.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kirk's standing up. That means we got another question.
I think, I'm trying to read between the lines, that this one from our other top viewer, Anonymous, speaks to the
I love
issue of
Anonymous.
subjectivity and objectivity as it pertains to, in particular, appraisals and the utilization of AI, but also underwriting. In what ways can AI in the mortgage process increase customer trust and loyalty in the industry? I think the implication here is that it operates more on an objective criteria rather than a subjective. So maybe
Which you were kind of mentioning, but automated underwriting, I mean, that's kind of AI. automated underwriting is helping with discrimination. Because before automated underwriting, an underwriter would look at it who's a human with their own human emotions, their own human preconceptions, and they look at it and, they might lean a certain way based on the fact that they had knew somebody that had that similar last name, and it just helps so much to have automated underwriting. The more we can move away from, especially with all the appraisal stuff going on with appraisers being accused of discrimination and appraising, the more automated that can be, the better, as long as a human's still verifying that information, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so in our appraisal tool, Fannie and Freddie have obviously put in your SSRs. FHA has the EAD, so it's running and scoring and comparables and CU, and the agencies have really tried to give us all of these tools. But the appraisal is still on average 32 pages. And there are probably 565 data fields on an appraisal. And so, we've leveraged, not necessarily like a chat GPT, but I do have an analysis tool that when that appraisal comes in, it pushes about 300 data points into my Encompass system. So I've met ULDD and this and that, so my humans don't have to input. But it also reads, it's like, you're over predominant. What are the key things I really need to know? Oh, I'm subject to. Oh, I'm over predominant value. Oh, your effective age is less than the term of your loan. And those to help just kind of guide. Doesn't necessarily on the racial, I don't see that too much in underwriting of an appraisal, the racial biases. You obviously have it. It is very prevalent in the market, some markets more than others, in the appraisers themselves.
Right.
But just, again, speed, getting through it. What are the highlights? I'm a 5 CU score. What do I really need to look at before I even go over to my CE tool? So,
and that's like basic stuff that we shouldn't be using humans for, a basic thing like that.
Correct.
Yeah, hey guys, you're a 1 CU score on a Fannie Mae. Page 1. Look at is this our borrower? Is this our seller? Is this our legal? Like the basics. You don't need to even really look at page 2 of the grid because you're rep and warranted on your value. So, but the underwriters, especially those that have been in the business for a long time, nope, I have to go through every page. Of
How
the
do you
appraisal.
convert the culture when
Well,
you've got...
that's all of this was making me think back to the day. Let's go before there was intelligence of
Yeah.
any kind in computers, and everything was just data entry and a little bit of calculator, right? So in my case, my first company, we gave it to our processor, and that person put it into Byte. It was like a typewriter, except it had a calculator, and then you'd get a printout, and now that was what you made edits on and gave
Did
it
you
back.
pull off the
and
bubble jet sides off that paper?
the credit report,
Yeah.
right? And the fax machine would clog
Yep.
up on the regular phone line, and so then the paper would get all jammed up, and then we didn't know if our credit report was coming in. We have to call for it, all this kind of stuff. But you go from that to that to that to that. When I got in the business at that time, people were saying, because I was 3 years away from Fannie doing AU or AUS, and the idea was within 3 or 4 years we were going to get loans through ATMs, because that's where everything was going, because it was going to be so objective, so much data, so able to do that. And we're today, and we're not anywhere close to that. We have way more checkpoints. We got way more people having to work on loan files. When I started in the company, I think we had about 75% sales and 25% support for that sales. Today, I'd almost flip it, and it's because of so many checkpoints, so many data points, so many compliance checkpoints, so much being looked at, that it's like this consumption to try to get to be more objective. But unfortunately, we're all still looking in the rearview mirror with this data. What happened in the past, and how does this relate to what happened in the past?
Correct.
And that's what led to the crash, in 2007, 8, 9, is that everyone was looking backwards and going, well, these people have great credit and they're paying, until they don't, right? Because we changed the LTVs, we changed credit score requirements, we changed all these things.
We
But
required
everyone was going
docs.
good until it wasn't, and then when it wasn't, it really went off the tracks. And I think that today you have the people with probably the most knowledge in the industry started out handwritten.
Right.
So you have this real hesitancy to trust into the system, and I think I'm pretty good at if I've got a new technology in front of me and it's worthy, I'm going to out with the old, in with the new. I'm just going to make a hard cut.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that in this industry, definitely. Other industries look at us and go, you guys are doing it what way? We're like 10 years behind every other type of industry. But you go to a car dealership and they still have a dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
still are doing it just like us too.
I have to sign more
So-
papers to buy a car than I do a house
Yeah.
nowadays.
All these regulated industries are still
Yeah.
back in the Stone Age, and we're a people business. Our challenge is in that people business, how do we get people to start with, okay, this new technology is here, I'm going to go to it today and trust it.
Yep.
But I'm going to, if I double check it against yesterday's style, now I'm doing the double work. Why am I doing that? So then I go with yesterday's style, and that's the hard part in this business.
Oh, yeah.
That, or if I trust this new technology, what does that mean for me in the future?
Well, I have a job.
Yeah,
Right.
I like
Yeah.
this job. I like what I'm doing. And the other thing about it is, and I will think in most cases it's the way, is if I have that one task, that one thing to perform today, right now, I am faster just doing it the way I know how. But if I have 100 of them to do, I'm way better adopting the new system
Correct.
and jumping into that. But we get into this one by one thing instead of this whole pipeline oversight and management.
I had a buddy who was a data freak, and he would look at processes that take 3 minutes, and if it takes 4 minutes, that's just a minute more. It's easy to, it's just a minute more. And then he would always extrapolate that out to, okay, cool, how many times do you do this thing? So every time you do this 3-minute thing in 4 minutes, that's 1 extra minute. 1 extra minute 60 times
That's
is an
yeah.
hour, and then all of a sudden add that up over a year, and it's like, okay, maybe we should learn the new process. But he would have to draw that out, because it does seem easy to just be like, I'll just do this thing, again, that way, and kind of stop automation in its tracks.
I think that one of the problems that folks who are resistant to adopt new technologies or new workflows, new processes, are because of some of the fears that you talked about, but also because of just a fear of something taking over what they feel is their value proposition. And I once had a conversation with a new loan officer to the industry that I was training, and he said to me at one point, you know what would be really cool is if I could just feed into some computer program all the characteristics of the borrower, the FICO score, all the details, and then it spits out, hey, here are the top 2 recommended loan programs for this particular individual, and here's a third you might consider. And I looked down, I was like, you sure you want that? And he was like, well, yeah, wouldn't that be cool? I was like, that's your job.
Yes.
And so what the modern conversation of that would be is, well, I don't like that AI is coming for your job. AI is not coming. Somebody else. I read this not too long ago. Somebody else said it. Can't remember who, but AI is not coming for your job. The person who learns how to leverage AI
That
is
was
coming
me.
for your
Correct.
job. That was
Yep.
you that
Yeah.
said that. All right.
I say it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And somebody else said it to me. I didn't make it up, but
Right.
like that is so true.
Leverage the bots, leverage the AI,
Sure.
leverage
Yeah.
all of it so that you have more time to do the things that only a human can do. Because
Absolutely.
there will always be things. You can talk to your customers more, go make a sales call, like something, read a book.
I think and you guys would probably agree, we're getting to a place where the loan file is no longer this for lack of a better word, the stack of paper. It might
the
be
copy
digital,
machine,
but
scanning
it's
it.
no longer going from the loan
With the colored
start
tabs.
to packaging it, getting it ready for submission, and then getting to underwriting, and then
Yeah.
getting to the next stages. Things are going to shoot to the finish line and be ready. Be ready. Be ready. That expires in 3 months. That's good.
Yep.
That's good. Don't even look at it again. And that's just causing people to go, well, wait, what about the picture, the story? Yeah, that part's good. Just look here. And so these other parts that are trailing, that's where people are going to focus. And to what you just said, I think people are not understanding that an originator that can do 10 loans will be able to do 30 loans.
Right.
And in the same amount of time, focus more on the forward, be the communicator, be the relayer of the information, and instead of being the transactional.
Yeah, don't collect the
flow
paper.
person
Build
as
a
well.
relationship with
Yeah.
your borrower, your realtor, to generate more business. Like they know me as a human, not the 12 pieces of paper that I brought into the office
Right.
to copy the W-2 on the fax machine.
It's
or
like
copy
it's like when remote online notary became a thing
Yeah.
for closings. Title companies were up on arms saying, "You're trying to take our business," and we're like, "Okay, let's think this through. Would you rather do 1 closing in an hour or 4?"
Right.
And they're like, and when they got that, you're like, "Oh, okay, that makes more
Well,
sense."
even
Right.
our hybrid e-closings, we moved to hybrid e-closings probably about 2 years ago, and the loan officers were like, "No, I want traditional. I want to go to my closings."
What's a hybrid e-closing?
So you can digitally sign everything that doesn't require a
Except the
notary.
notarization.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's
Saves you a ton of time. at
correct.
the-
So you're really going in
Yeah.
and signing 10 pieces of paper, if you will. And so the loan officers are like, "No, I want traditional." I'm like, "Why do you want traditional?" Well, because I go to my closings. Great.
So
Okay.
that they can stand there and hold the
And you can still go to your closings, and you're not there now an hour in this awkward, what's the APR, and you're sending a note and a deed and an occupancy affidavit, like that's it. Still go, and then you're there 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you can
Better
still,
victory lap.
like, let's go get coffee or whatever. And they're like, oh. So, I mean, we run about 82% hybrid e-close.
Wow.
It is our default. Unless
Yep.
you tell me it's a mail out or a power of attorney, something. Everything's going hybrid.
Yep.
Borrower opens it up. They can look at it in the morning, look at all my docs, all the questions are answered before they even drive there. It's just a much better customer experience. But there was this fear.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to touch them while they're signing. They don't even probably want you there.
It's,
Like,
You're
it's
just
not a
taking up a
zone
chair.
of comfort
Exactly.
is I think the
Yeah.
issue. And I think people have old metrics of what a customer, pipeline looks like, what a number of transactions I can do look like. And I think the future, don't quote me on it, is that maybe we make a little bit less across the board. We have less expense across the board, and we all do more effectively at whatever position we're in.
Any loan officer that's holding on to a comp plan of 150, 175 bips, they're going to have some pretty tough sledding.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Technology is going to make it so that they do.
Right.
Well, entities are earning less than that. So
Yeah.
how can
Yeah.
the originator,
Okay,
at the
let's
same
get
time-
into that because it's a sensitive subject. But when it
It
comes
is.
down to people getting paid X amount, I see a lot out there, especially because I'm in some Facebook groups of brokers and bankers and or independent mortgage bankers. And in some of these groups, people are like, if I can't make 350 bips, 350, 400 bips the company, and then, LO gets X amount of bips, and I don't want to get into like how many exactly you guys are paying or anything, but there is that fight of like, where's my money? And I want the better interest rates, but also I want to make exactly the same amount of money. And there has to be an awareness at some point of like,
there's
those things
one pie.
match.
There's one pie,
Right.
and
It's
how
just a
you
circle.
slice the pie, and something's got to give.
And if you look at the MBA, and I think Stratmore releases the numbers on expenses, and MBA covers them, but mortgage banks are not making a lot of money on these deals. And if you look at the breakdown, most of the expense is loan officers' commissions.
Yeah.
And at some point, we have to go, like we could do something about that. But how does that happen when they could just leave and go somewhere else and get the same they were getting?
Yeah.
All the mortgage executives need to get in a room and say, we're not going to pay over X.
Price fixing doesn't count.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm out of ideas.
That's where I think efficiency comes into play
Yeah.
because I'm just throwing this out there,
Yeah.
if you made 100 basis points and now you're going to make 75, but you're going to do 2 in the time of 1, you're making
Right.
150 versus 100.
Yeah.
And I think that's the nature of where this is heading. I wouldn't call it like we're all going to get a loan out of an ATM anytime soon.
Right.
I don't think
Sure.
we're
Right.
there. But I do think that this new normal after the huge rise of volume in COVID, and by the way, we didn't have more units than ever before. We just had more volume. And if you go back to, earlier years, 15 years ago, you had a lot more units in that thing. So
Really?
we've actually become less efficient all along this whole way because we've been trying to stack on and bolt on all this extra technology, all this extra compliance, all these extra checkpoints. And at some point, we are going to solve for some of that on the processing side and on the flow side. And at the same time, then the front end is going to have to adapt to, I'm going to need to feed the machine more. And it's all going to work out. I think people can actually make the same or more going forward.
Sure.
But I think not in the same style. You cannot hold on to the same way. And real estate agents are probably facing some of this right about
We're going to
now.
get into that. Kirk, you look like you've got a question for
This is
us.
from one of our favorite viewers, Kirk Faulkner. Curious about the average age of a mortgage loan originator was about 54 years of age. In just a few short years, it's dropped into the mid-40s as people have left the business and the youth movement is coming forward. How much do you think that simple reality will affect the adoption and acceptance of technology and compensation modifications as we move forward as an industry?
Young people. Are you guys seeing young people?
Yes.
We are. I feel like I'm going to get entrapped into like an age discrimination conversation here.
Keep drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we are seeing younger.
Let me tell you about these freaking millennials.
But it's
Get off my lawn.
But there is this balance of, yes, they're young and they're adopting technology more, but they also haven't lived the lives that we've all lived. I mean, I'm in that mid-40 range of they didn't go through. I mean, A lot of them haven't even went through the COVID. I mean, some would say even COVID on mortgage was almost worse than the 07, 08, depending on your position where you were and all. I mean, they
Right.
were both bad. I was, 7 years. Oh, you obviously have been in the business less than 7 years. That's always just been in my and you're going to refi every 7 years. So that's just how I was raised. So I think you will see the adoption with technology, but we still have a long, it's a ways, in my opinion.
I think, so technology, you were able to create your own world. No one relied on you the whole time. You weren't like changing a tire on a car that was rolling down the freeway, right? You were able to do this on your own and then build it up and then present it and test it and now bring it to market. The mortgage industry is built on a framework in which there's old school technology behind the scenes, flat file type stuff. And it's not this dynamic flow. It's not this, we can't keep up with the latest and greatest. And then you have all these other vendors that need to interact with the software. You have all these other softwares that need to interact with the software. Yeah, the CloudStrike thing that, it was an example of how tied together, industries are to their software.
Right.
And then you have people that run the companies that did not grow with software. So the fact that there's younger folks in the business, I think they get a little frustrated, like, why aren't we doing everything digital? And yet a lot of our clients are not digital, yet some clients are digital. And I think that's also channel specific focus in this industry is tough, because before those technology, everyone was one-stop shop, because there was no difference between that technology and that technology. Now through technology you can become efficient, but you can just market. There are some call center style lenders out there that don't do their relationships, that don't do their referrals, that don't have feet on the street so much. So it's totally different than what it was in the past, and so to try to compete in a product against someone who's super streamlined in that product is difficult. It's just like Southwest Airlines I just saw today. They're going from their you pick a seat model to you get assigned seats.
Really?
You'll
but
get
they
your
were-
A3.
I never fly on. So.
But so they obviously succumbed. They were so different, unique, cut the
Yeah.
prices down, were able to fill planes, do all this kind of stuff. So their model must have changed somewhere in here to where that's not.
Are they going to
efficient.
charge for
And-
luggage now?
No, they're going to keep
Okay.
the free. But something I just read today. But the point is that it's hard for this industry to shift to newer technology or newer flow when the newer flow isn't necessarily compliant. It's not necessarily been able to be tracked and run through all the checkpoints. And if the mothership software can't handle it, then you can't implement it. And so it's an interesting environment to be in, to try to push towards these changes, because you're kind of beholden to that underlying framework of software.
We're as advanced as Homeland Security, I think. I got to see this guy speak who was it was in Texas, actually. You may have been there. It was the general he was like some high up in the military. He was in the White House when all the 9/11 stuff happened. He was the guy behind the water bottle being a problem and who made us pour out our water bottle before we went through. And when he was speaking, he's like, you guys, that was just like a thing I thought up that I thought maybe this could help because of the specific problem we were having. I didn't think it would still be going today. Like that, my bad. Like, but the amount of like, well, once we're doing something, that's just what we do. Like, regardless
Yes.
of whether there's a
Right.
better way to do it, we're just going to, we've been doing this a really long time, so let's just continue with this.
Right.
It's crazy. And then getting loan officers, the companies aren't tech savvy. Loan officers, especially if you've been doing this a long time, you really like the way that you do it. And so you converting over is pretty tough too.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, part of it is just encouragement. A lot of it's education.
Yeah.
A lot of it's putting your best people up in front of the room and saying, tell everybody how you use Mortgage Coach.
Right.
And how, I mean, dude, I just saw Savage's latest numbers on one of his clients uses Mortgage Coach, and their pricing exception is almost zero on Mortgage Coach loans. And it's way higher on non-Mortgage Coach loans. So he's like showing,
Anytime
I
you
mean, you
use
can
it,
use it
yeah.
if you want,
Yeah.
but, you'd be crazy not to.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving over to a controversial subject again.
Oh,
NAR. The NAR settlement's getting close. And I went looking at houses last week. When I texted you, that was me looking at houses over in Sun River.
Yeah.
And I have a realtor over there who worked at that same office you and I were talking about.
Yes.
And she's awesome, and I haven't been a buyer of a house since 2011. That's when I bought a short sale. We bid on it at Thanksgiving and closed on it before Easter. So that took a little while, but it was on sale, and I'm pretty happy now that I did it. That was the last time I bought a house. And so you and I kind of laugh about, I can always say from my perspective how things are, but I'm not doing loans. I can't say how it's affected on the streets or how the streets deals with it. So being a buyer of a house right now and having spoken about the NAR settlement, I found myself Googling to find out when the NAR settlement kicks in because I wanted to see houses and I don't want to sign an agreement before seeing a house. So point one, the borrowers or buyers with that NAR settlement, it doesn't put them in a really good spot because I was like, please don't make me sign an agreement. I want to see houses and I want to meet you, find out if you're good at looking at houses with me.
Yeah.
And under the new NAR settlement, they're going to have me sign an agreement saying I'm paying them. So we go out looking at 3 houses because I didn't have to sign it. She's amazing. We love her. She's our realtor. Down in Central Oregon, she's the one. It's a 4-hour drive from my house, so I'm not going to go look at houses. I need somebody local.
Yeah.
Who knows the local market. So this is a perfect use of a realtor, right? She sent me the agreement today. It's a pretty reasonable price for the buyer, but I'm reading this thing and it says if the seller doesn't cover, then I'm on the hook for that percentage. As a buyer, I'm like, well, can I find out first if they're going to cover before,
Yeah.
And we're back to square one.
I don't feel good about this. And I actually text her because it also says I'm on the hook through the end of this year. If I buy a house, she gets paid.
Anywhere else.
But then I go, what if I buy a house in Camas? Because we're also trying to buy a house locally. And she's like, no, because we put Central Oregon on the checkbox, but it doesn't totally say that.
What's the definition of Central Oregon? That's a pretty broad.
It is. That's the only house I'll buy in Central. But,
I know, but
Right.
I don't think this is good for consumers.
No, so I mean, the biggest thing I saw out of that settlement right away, or even the lawsuit, is that you're solving a problem that doesn't exist. The people that are complainants on it, they are folks that had a for sale by owner and they were frustrated that agents weren't showing their house. That's not a party to this problem because they chose not to go this route. They went the other route, and they should know if you go this route, you're not going to get served the same way, especially if you don't have courtesy to a buyer's agent. And so
I love that you call it courtesy.
I
I know that's the name for
what
it.
it used to be. Yeah.
If you're not being courteous by paying a bunch of money to a buyer's agent,
by the big tip behind the scenes, but the system was built that way. And if you're a seller, do you want more activity at your house? Do you want good activity at your house? If you're a first-time seller, a first-time buyer, do you want to risk underrepresentation? If you were a first-time buyer and you're buying in Camas, and you're looking at this going, I have no idea what I'm signing here, and I have no idea how long it's going to take, and I've got no idea what effort this person's
I
going
don't
to.
even know if I'm going to like you.
Yeah,
Right.
we have no
Right,
idea.
right.
So we're not paying hourly, we're not paying by month, we're not
Yeah.
paying by service,
Right.
and maybe we will at some point. But we're solving a problem that is actually hurting the people that need the solution the most, and that
Right.
would be your first-time buyer, your first-time seller, your people that can't afford a big hiccup in
They just
in
save their
this
down payment.
transaction.
I mean, they got 3.5% down.
Right.
They don't have
They're
the
not
money
looking
for
at another
like
3%.
a buyer's
Right.
fee.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There were so many, just reading through that form with you.
We read it together for the first. I got the email while we're shooting video. I'm like,
Yeah.
James, look at this, and so we stopped and reviewed it.
I was sitting there shaking my head going, this has done nothing but muddy the waters even further. And so now instead of just saying, you're my realtor, I want you to go out and do your fiduciary responsibility or obligation in serving my interests, go find me a house, negotiate a fair price, and you give me the advice on what you think is the right thing to do here. And instead of just saying that, like she had the 2% already in, rather than asking you a question or giving you a form, do you prefer paying a percentage of the sale or a flat fee for itemized list of services? That is what I have been, ever since every article I've been reading about this, I'm like, the solution's pretty simple. Just itemize out what it is that you are that you want as a
Services that
consumer,
you're looking to sign on for.
and
Yeah.
whether that's percent, and then you choose whether it's percentage based or flat fee based, and how much is that particular contract negotiation? $500. Okay, if that's what it's worth for you, then find a realtor who will do a contract negotiation for $500. Good luck. I mean, it's a little bit more involved than what you might be thinking, but it's at least going to, like in the example, the hypothetical that you and I came up with, instead of parting with 14,000, well, maybe now I can negotiate that flat fee for just X number of services, and that total ticket comes in 4,500, and I just pocketed 10 grand.
I had a call from a branch manager. Well, she'd emailed me, so I just called her back yesterday. And it's the most bizarre conversation in my head. She's like, okay, so if we negotiate in that the seller is going to pay the buyer's commission fee, which is just gibberish.
Right.
Okay, right? Is that included in the interested party contributions? And I'm like,
Well,
no,
no,
it's
it's-
not. I know, but it's
never
now.
has
It's,
been.
Sure,
we're not
sure,
used to
yeah.
having to even discuss buyer paying commissions.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
So she's like, if the seller is going to pay $3,000 in closing costs and prepaids, and the seller wants to pay the 2% commission fee that the buyer has to pay to their agent, that's not all in the 3% that the seller is allowed to pay. I'm like, no, because that's commission fees, and these are my lender fees, and it is completely separate. But that's where nobody. It's like
Right.
once a week I'm getting these
Well, and
questions.
you're having it with, so lenders have been regulated for quite some time.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that regulation has increased incrementally
even
over time.
even more than the real estate
Yeah.
community.
I would
Yeah, it's like,
suggest
welcome to the party, pal.
500 times more than
Little
the
bit.
real estate
I would say
community.
mostly it hasn't changed on the real estate community since I've been in the
Right,
business,
right,
except
right,
for
right.
some technology
Yeah.
and all this. And so now you have all these individual players who are independent contractors for the most part at where they're at, and who think independently and who haven't been going to weekly meetings at their offices like
Correct.
used to happen, because they've got access to all this information. Otherwise, they're just doing it independently. And you have people that there's teams, there's individuals that are very successful in real estate, and then there's folks that do 2 transactions a year.
if that.
Are they familiar with these terms? Are they able to negotiate them? Have they talked it through? When I got going in loans, I was told 10 loans a month or you're fired. That was the
Whoa.
mental method to get us to go, that's the
That's your
goal,
benchmark.
that's the benchmark. So obviously, doing 7 loans, you weren't fired. But the point was, if you don't shoot for 10, you're not going to shoot for enough.
Yeah.
You're not going to touch enough. You're not going to be expert enough. You're not going to be relevant enough. In our industry, if you only do an FHA once every 6 months, you're not really good at FHAs. Like, you may be good at loans, but you're not good at an FHA. If you do VAs once a month, or once
Yeah.
every 6 months, same thing. So if you're in it and touching it, you're going to be better off. But we practiced amongst ourselves when we were getting in this business. And I'm watching this industry, the real estate side, who hasn't ever had any of this. They're all over the place, and they're thinking, well, we can just do it in our community this way. Well, you can't. Well, you can't put it in the listing. Well, you can't do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. And how's that protecting the seller or the buyer? And the seller is a consumer too, and they're most likely going to buy a home, so they're not being protected in this. This was a buyer-oriented thing, and now the buyer has to pay more to get the representation. It doesn't really make a ton of sense.
I'll tell you the one amazing thing, and by the way, Kenzie, if you're watching, I'm going to sign that form and send it back over to you. Where she won my business, the realtor that we were walking through house with, is we were staying in an Airbnb, and we were looking at these houses, and I'm not, like, Sun River is, I think, on its way to flatten out or be more affordable. And so we were kind of getting a head start on our shopping. And we looked at these 3 houses. We're like, no. And then she goes, well, do you like the Airbnb you're staying in? And we said, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like, it needs a lot of work. Like, 3 windows are blown out. You could cut yourself like crazy on the back deck. There's so many splinters sticking out. Like, it needs a lot of work. But the floor plan's amazing. And she goes, well, let's go look at that. And so we go look at this Airbnb, and she goes, okay, so here's the deal. 40% of my purchases are houses that aren't on the market. And so if you find a place like this, I will just call this owner and I'll say, do you want to sell this house? And she goes, you'd be surprised how many people are ready to sell. She goes, if you find an area, I will walk every door of that area, knocking on doors, researching, finding out who owns it. It's owned by a trust. She's already figured out who's part of that. She's like, I'm going to go find that person. I'm going to get you this purchase. And I was like, and you earned it.
Yes.
Yep.
Like, that's
That is an agent
Yes.
who has earned
Correct.
that 2%.
Yes.
Being
Or
in the
3%.
street right there.
And you have to do
Yes.
that. If she would have just been like, well, let me know what you like. We saw 3 houses. When you're ready, let
Go
me
check
know.
it out on Zillow.
Yeah. But that, I was like, okay, now I do the math on the percentage, and I go, okay, that's worth it. Like
Yeah.
that. And I
Absolutely
think every
right.
realtor's got to be able to be that good, or I wouldn't sign it. If she wasn't that good, I'd send that thing right back and be like, sorry, when we're serious, I'll let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what everybody's got to do, and it was amazing. I do wish mortgage originators could lobby for the ability to do the exact same thing. If you're shopping for a mortgage, sign here. I'm going to make 2%.
Yep.
And then you can't go anywhere else till the end of the year. If you close a loan, you're going to pay me for closing a loan with somebody else. That's just not a thing on the mortgage side.
So name another industry that has basically all the players that are significant in it. So not credit reports, not appraisals,
Yeah.
maybe not home inspectors, things like that. But all of the other major players that are involved in every single real estate transaction do not get paid until it closes. We all perform services for those that don't close, and we all perform services for those that do close well in advance. And sometimes there's more services or less, depending on the transaction. And the fee can't change.
Right.
Right.
How is that?
It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if I was to make, and I'm not usually advocating for less compliance or more flexibility, but if I was to make one change on a loan that you've been dragged on for so long on, being able to switch to hourly would be kind of nice, right? But you don't want to switch to hourly on a rate and term refi that's like open and shut case. So it is that balance of, okay, this guy was
Pick your
super
poison.
easy, that guy was a huge pain. And also I wouldn't advocate, I'm talking myself out of it, I wouldn't advocate for it because then your person who is first time home buyer, you've got to work with them. They're not ready to buy a house. You're going to spend that time. That person would then end up paying more. But I do like the idea of if I'm going to do all of this with you, I'd love to know that it's actually going to close. And
Right.
that's where real estate agents have really won, because if they do the work for you, they know that they're going to get paid based on that contract that they had you sign.
Well, it kind of is the same for loan originators because I mean, you know this about me. I'm a huge advocate of getting yourself out on social media, building a community, educating those potential clients, specifically putting that education out there for the people who haven't met you yet. And that, because that's going to be one of the, if they're doing any kind of due diligence, like right now, if their plan is not to buy a house for another 36 months, they don't care. They're not consuming your content. You're not the kind of person that they need to hear from right now. But if you start putting out that content now, then by the time they are ready and want to get educated, you have built up a repository of content that is going to do wonders. And if they start coming at you with those questions that tend to be those on the fence type of consumer type of questions, like, I don't know, we're just going to wait for rates to drop or for home prices to drop or blah, 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 blah. Then you can refer them, instead of spending 30 minutes or 45 minutes trying to convince them otherwise, you can say, I get it, I understand that's a concern. Why don't you check out, this is an article that I did, or this is a video that I did about this whole concept of what you're giving up, the opportunity cost. You can do that right now. If you want to wait, great, wait. If you're not ready, don't force yourself into something. But you need to understand the opportunity cost of what you're giving up. And so if you set forth a plan of creating that content now, providing that kind of value over the course of time, within a couple of years' time, you do that consistently, within a couple of years' time, you're going to have such a massive repository of content that your partners will be sharing on your behalf, that you will be able to share whenever somebody comes in, calls you with a frequently asked question or anything. And you'll be able to basically do what that realtor was offering to do for you in farming a community specifically just for you and Mindy. And it will create such an incredible value proposition that they won't think about going anywhere else, even if it does take them a little bit longer to get that loan put through.
Yep. How are we doing on questions? Kirk is asleep, so not checking.
He was ruminating on your last suggestion.
All right, we are going to finish with one question that each of you will answer. So we talked about young people getting in the business. You have all been in the business for a bit. What's one piece of advice to somebody on their first year in the business right now, 2024, they just walked into the business. As the business is right now, what's one piece of advice you would give them based on your experience?
I would say that a lost art is putting forth the effort and then finding the reward. I think that a lot of people in today's environment are coming to a position asking to get compensated and then perform the work. And I think that, so much success has been held by people that have participated in this industry over time and that have done well with it. But they put out the effort first. It's a 3-year commitment to almost like a paid internship to really build a book of business, build your understanding of this this industry, how the transactions work, how to start working with people. And I guess we're speaking to originators in how I'm answering it right here. But be ready to invest yourself into it because the returns are fantastic. But if you come to it thinking it's going to reward you early, then it's not a good match.
I love it.
If I'm speaking to this person with my direct SVP of marketing hat on, the first thing out of my mouth is I'm telling you, give yourself the chance to allow your personal brand to evolve. You are brand new in the industry. You don't need a new logo. You don't need you don't need a tagline. You haven't even closed a loan yet. Give that time to evolve and allow you to kind of figure out, try different strategies, try different things, see what works for you. Double down on what does, discard what doesn't, and allow yourself the opportunity to grow as a professional in this industry. Because I have too many conversations with new LOs who come to me and say, "Hey, I need a new personal brand." Because my first question to them is, "What's wrong with the one you got?" And then they realize, "Oh, I'm asking the wrong question." And so then you're able to have a much different, much more effective conversation. But basically it comes down to this: don't listen to any coach who tells you need a personal brand. You need a special vanity logo or URL. You need this or that to help you stand out. No, you don't. You need to learn the business first.
Well, that was going to exactly be my question. I mean, there are
That's
so
why
many
I jumped in ahead of you.
Yeah. So many jobs and careers you have to go to college for, or trade school, or tech school, all of it. I mean, beauty school just to do hair. Really, any career you choose, whether it be mortgage or real estate, I mean, you got to educate yourself. And especially in the mortgage world, you should be an expert. That's what you're selling. You're selling you. And you get a couple loans and you get the fancy logo. But educate yourself. Don't pretend you know it all. Read. I mean, I think that is the number one problem. And I don't think it's a technology problem. Even ChatGPT can spit it out for you. Somebody still has to read the words.
Right.
And we have do I need that to speak to you and read it out loud to you? Do I braille? What is that? But educate yourself and become an expert. And regardless of the position, post-closing, originator, manager, just educate. Become the best that you can be, because that's what you're selling.
Yeah.
Regardless of your position.
It's like what you said earlier, that nobody knew guidelines better than you.
Right.
That's how you stood out.
Yep. And I will give one piece of advice, and that is learn from other industries. So many people go to industry events, and I love it, and they're amazing. But some of my best things I've done in the company were things I learned at a conference that wasn't mortgage related.
Yep.
So other industries have figured some things out that we could learn from. And I went to a tech conference, and it launched the Coupe. So I learned something at that tech conference. I'm like, why don't we launch a technology? And I mean, it absolutely changed my life. So don't just listen to mortgage. Mortgage isn't going to give you a lot of tech, future conversations, but get out there, learn from other people. With that, you guys, thanks for coming. Thanks for flying all the way from Austin.
My pleasure.
For driving up from Lake Oswego and Happy Valley, right?
Yeah, close enough.
Appreciate you guys. And hopefully this was beneficial for everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.